you're back. You made it back.
I made it back. I made it back from the most expensive city I've been in.
Oh my god, yeah, you were in Zurich.
I know, but thank God it was like a free little trip to Zurich because the airline has to pay for it. And I really hope they do because yesterday when we got back, I had to fill out the compensation form and we had to keep every single receipt from every meal, not the hotel and taxi and train and everything. And I had to calculate it all together. It's a really big sum, so I really hope they pay back.
How is it? How can it be a big sum for like 2 days? I mean, I don't know.
Well, it was 3 nights.
Yeah.
So what happened was we were on our way back on Monday from Austria. We were doing some remote working, my boyfriend and I. And my dad was there as well. He was flying back with us as well. We were on the same plane. Well, we were meant to be in the same plane. And then we arrived at the airport, and about 2 hours before we should have left, our flight got cancelled. And then we found out every flight to the UK has been cancelled. And then we found out there has been an air traffic control issue in the whole of the UK, so like Scotland, everything. And not just from Switzerland, but like everywhere. Like no one was able to fly to the UK except for the people who were already in the air and meant to land because they did some manual stuff, I think, to make them land. But yeah, everything else was cancelled, so it was pure chaos. They then told us we can't do anything. Take a hotel, keep all the receipts. You will get a message from us at night at some point or early in the morning of your next scheduled flight. And then before I went to bed, they did tell us that they fixed the issue, but I never got an email. So we called at like 7 a.m. because I didn't sleep well. And then they were like, well, you can have a flight on the 31st of August. So I was like, cool. We got my dad on the flight earlier because there was one seat. But we didn't fit. So yeah, and then Zurich is really expensive. Like our hotel for 3 nights, they allow you to stay in a 3-star hotel, nothing above it. And our hotel for 3 nights was about 1,024 francs, Swiss francs, because that's Zurich.
Yeah. How much would that be in pounds?
I don't know. The franc is really high because usually 1 franc, I don't know, is franc the English word for right? Well, it is now. 1 franc.
I don't know. I didn't even know they had a different currency. Why did they not just say with euros?
In German, we say Franken. They're not part of the EU, Switzerland. And
I knew that. I knew that.
Yeah, of course you did. I know. No,
I was testing you.
The franc was usually really high. It was not really high. It was usually lower than the euro, but now it's higher. So I don't know. It's about the same in pounds probably. So yeah, £1,000. And that was just a hotel. I paid like 12 francs for a carrot juice. So everything is very expensive.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a lesson about, I don't know, economy.
I don't think I know anyone who has worse luck when it comes to booking flights and
I know
places.
The last year, there's been so much shit going on. Traveling has become a pain. I am traumatized. I will never go on holiday without my work laptop, ever. Because I'm going to Italy in a week. Well, on the 10th of September. And I've heard that there is a volcano somewhere in Italy that is having more action than usual. It's like one of the bigger ones and it could erupt. But like, it's not really a thing. It's not actually meant to happen, but people are like talking about it. I bet you it will happen and I will not be able to come back because of a stupid volcano eruption.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. I'm also going on holiday in a couple of days.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait.
You're going to Greece.
Yes, I'm going to Athens. I've never been. I'm so excited. It's going to be great. But very hot, probably too hot for me. Although the weather in the UK looks very hot as well. In fact, next week it actually looks, the temperatures in the UK are currently higher, I think, than in Athens. Well, like the predictions for next week. Because there's like 2 days of rain now in my Athens weather predictions. So yeah.
So how hot is it meant to be in the UK then?
Well, so in Athens, it was usually around 32, but now there's a couple of days where it's 26 and raining, and then in the UK it will be more like 28 and sunny.
So you're going on holiday and it's raining again. Is that what you think?
Yeah, honestly, this summer I went to St. Ives. It rained every single day. I went to Berlin. It basically rained every single day. And I'm going to fucking Greece, and it looks like it will be raining over there as well.
Well, I hope it doesn't rain, because I don't know, you would expect from Greece. It's going to be nice. I mean, it's better to rain than to have the wildfires, I guess. But
yeah, that's true. But yeah, I'll keep everyone posted. It will be a nice trip anyway.
We do talk a lot about the weather on this podcast.
Oh my God, we do. Yeah,
we've lived in the UK for too long at this point.
Let's just move on. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to Millennial Musings. I am Isabella.
And I'm Gladys, and we are two opinionated millennials who have made dumb mistakes. What we want to do here is share our experiences and offer the advice that we wish we had received.
Yes, and just a disclaimer, we are not therapists or life coaches, and we have no actual criteria to be giving any advice whatsoever. But what we could be is your new bestie or your big sister, so just sit back, grab any drink, and get ready for some millennial musings.
So, as always, we focus on different themes and we try to answer 3 to 4 questions within these themes. And this episode is actually a little bit of a bonus episode because we did our 3 corporate episodes, and then we realized actually maybe it would be good to do a 4th one where we actually discuss being on the job market, applying for jobs, and also maybe giving some advice that could help you guys. Of course, we don't have any experience as, I don't know, recruiters. We've never been hiring managers or anything, but we have done a lot of applying for jobs in our home countries, abroad, and we have some experience with interviews as well. So yeah, we just thought that it would be nice to share what we have learned and what we would do differently.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I guess it would be nice to start with just talking about the general experiences we had in the job market. Would you like to start, Gladys? Would you like to tell us just a bit, anything that really happened when you were applying for jobs, how it was, the experiences you've collected over the years?
Yes. So I would say my experience on the job market has been a mixed bag. I'm from Belgium, and so when I was still living in Belgium, I would, of course, apply for student jobs, internships, that kind of thing. Then when I lived in Berlin, I also had to find an internship there. And then eventually when I decided that I wanted to move to the UK, that was probably my longest and most intense experience job hunting, because then I started looking for jobs abroad, like permanent full-time jobs abroad. And yeah, it was definitely a wild ride. Because I think when I was still living in Belgium, and also, and I've mentioned this before, but I did a business degree where honestly, things like this, I cannot express how much my studies focused on applying for jobs. I had to do job interviews in 4 different languages. I had to write CVs and cover letters in 4 different languages. I had to do presentations twice a week and whatever. So I would say I was probably as equipped as you can possibly be going into that experience. And it's still really it still was intense. In Belgium, especially applying for, student jobs and everything, that was fine. That was usually okay. But then, yeah, I think well, I'll just focus for now on when I decided, okay, I'm done with university now. I want to move to London and I need to find a job there. I need to find a job abroad. Of course, London, very expensive city. I knew I wanted to live by myself as well. So I had a minimum salary that I needed to earn to survive. And finding a job, eventually the job I ended up getting was the shit show job. And I must have applied for hundreds and hundreds of jobs. And it probably took me, I think it took me about 6 months to get the shit show job. And it was an incredibly frustrating experience. Honestly, I applied for jobs where I knew that I matched every single point on the job description. I applied for jobs where I felt like I was overqualified. And I just wouldn't hear back. And I think that is probably many people's experience, especially if you're applying for jobs in a big city or something where there's more people looking for jobs than there are jobs, especially, of course, in certain industries. I think that's probably a relatable experience for many. So that's also why I kind of wanted to share the things that I have learned along the way. But first, how about you?
Yes. So like you in Vienna, and I did apply for like student jobs, which was fine. I think they mainly, depending on what job you're going for, they just check are you an idiot or not. But I didn't actually learn anywhere specifically how to write a CV. I just always talk to people who are like my brother or my family, like any family member, just to look over my CV, see if it makes sense. But then I think my proper application process started when I was looking for internships a lot during my studies, because they were basically proper jobs, just underpaid and well, still as stressful though. But then, like you, once I was in the UK and I wanted like my first real job after uni, I was looking for quite a while. And so when I moved to the UK, I'm originally from Austria, I studied for a year, I did my master's degree. And then when the degree came to an end, I started applying and I never heard back from anyone. So in my head, and I think that might be a good tip for when you want a job in a country you haven't worked or lived in for a while, because I felt like maybe they are not replying to me because they can't see that I actually ever worked in this country, that I have any, credentials here. So I then started applying for volunteering roles, which actually worked. I applied for like a film volunteering role at the BFI. And it was just for like 2 or 3 weeks, but it gave me the feeling like, okay, and now I can put something in my CV that's related to this country. But then I still had nothing back when I applied for several different roles. And then I talked to my boyfriend. We've been together about a year at that point. And he just looked at my CV and was like, this is okay, but you're really not selling the best version of yourself. So he helped me work over the CV, helped me with the cover letters. And I'm not kidding, the first 3 things I sent out, I heard back from. One being the shit show. But yeah, I think for me, it was also just CVs in Austria are probably different than in the UK. Well, you probably should sell yourself as well as possible in any CV. But one thing I learned is it's not very likely to have an image, for example, on your CV in the UK, but you kind of need to have it in Austria. So I changed that as well. But I don't know. I don't know if that actually has that big of an impact, because when you have a CV, you have LinkedIn on it, and then everyone can see a picture as well. So I don't know.
Maybe it's also good to say that, so your boyfriend is actually someone who has hired people and everything, so yes. He does have that specific experience.
Yes, he has done interviews, he decided who to hire, and he looks at a lot of CVs now, even more than back then. So we actually, the advice we will give later on is combined with like things he suggested as well. So shout out, thank you.
So we're not just telling you some random stuff. We actually did work with an expert on this one.
We fact checked.
Also, I told a lie earlier when I said when I applied for jobs in Belgium, it was usually fine. Actually, no, there was one store, and this actually turned into a bit of a running gag with me and my friends because there's a store called Het Kruidvat, which is literally boots. Not even boots. Not even, I think. I would say it's a tackier, cheaper version of boots that doesn't have the pharmacy department or anything. Anyway, I applied there and I didn't even get an interview or anything. I didn't even get a phone call. And I think about 5 of my friends did the same thing, and none of us ever got a call. And so it kind of turned into this thing where we were all like, okay, why can we not even get an interview there? Yeah, that was so yeah, actually no, I wasn't always successful.
I have in Vienna. I had some interviews where I actually, because I lied as well. Before we even started recording, it was like I actually didn't get denied from a lot of jobs. Well, in Vienna, I did by 2. But the thing was, one of them was like, we really want to hire you. Do you have a driving license? And I was like, nope. So I didn't get it. And then the other one was at the radio station as an intern. And they also said, we really like you, but you will have to talk, or like not talk, but write quick summaries of what the traffic looks like in certain areas of Vienna. And they asked me a few questions about the roads. And I was like, I don't drive. I don't know. So yeah, the driving license cost me 2 jobs as well in Vienna.
Oh, well, the fact that I was foreign and wasn't living in the UK cost me a couple of jobs. Not as much as I would have imagined, because this was right when Brexit had been voted for. But it wasn't actually, it hadn't really been like implemented or anything. That happened a couple of months after I moved. So I moved at the right time. But there were a handful of companies who are like, yeah, you don't live here yet, and we don't really know what the situation is going to be like. So no, because we don't want to end up having to sponsor you or something, which I guess fair enough. But yeah, so also, of course, I didn't mean to offend anyone who works at the store that I mentioned in Flanders. It was just funny that me and a handful of friends who all have we had experience in retail and everything, and just the fact that none of us got as much as a phone call was just very, very funny to me. Anyway, maybe we should start with some practical tips specifically about a CV and a cover letter then. So do you want to start?
Yes, I can. I can start with the CV. The tips I have for the CV. Okay, so I think the first thing is maybe it always depends what roles you're going for, right? But I think don't just make your CV a white page with some text. I think there are so many options to make your CV stand out a bit more, with some nice and subtle designs, or with some quite colorful and quirky designs, depending on which industry you are in and what role you're going for. If you're going for something creative like writer or filmmaker or content creator, I would also then add a link to your portfolio, or link your website or anything that you have previously created or worked on. Or just create a Google Drive folder where you can upload stuff. And honestly, everything you worked on counts. You just assisted by bringing people water, fine. You still worked on that set, for example, and you've still seen things and heard things and experienced things, so mention it. And that brings me to just be your biggest champion. Don't talk yourself down. Don't let the imposter syndrome take over, and be proud and clear about all the tasks you had in your previous roles. And then also, and I think this is one of the most important tips that I've learned as well, is instead of just listing all the tasks you were responsible for, combine the tasks with the impact you had for the company, for example, that you were working for. And also, if you have, make sure you can use some numbers or some data that you have available to support the proof of the impact that you had. So for example, let's say you are a copywriter and you're responsible for writing B2B newsletters, and those newsletters are there to inform customers about their new products. So list that. Write down responsible for writing B2B newsletters, inform customers about new products. That's the task. And then name the impact. And then you can say, for example, it improved the click-through rates through the newsletter by 15%, and then the product information requests improved by 8%. I just think, add something to the tasks. Don't just say, I wrote newsletters, if that makes sense. And then, do I have something else? No, I think those are my tips. I hope they make sense.
They do. Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
Sorry, I forgot one.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit, well, it makes things seem more work than it should be, but well, it is a lot of work, but it's worth it. So what I mean with it is, when you write your CV, try to adapt it to the specific job description that you are going for. So, for example, you should choose the same wording as they do when they talk about specific expectations. Let's say they want someone who has experience with commercial copywriting for big corporate clients. And you have done that, but your CV might say writing B2B newsletters. Change it to exactly their wording, because some companies use an AI automatic filtration system. So they just use that to find out who has similar things in their CV as we have in our job description.
That last one is a very good tip. That I'm going to be honest, I haven't really done that very often because I've just usually been too lazy, but it actually is a really good tip because, and yes, like you said as well, you can literally just you can have a template in Canva or something and then just make copies and just change the wording every time and then just download that new version or something. That's definitely how I would do it now if I would start applying for jobs again. Yes, so that's definitely a good one. Also, one thing that is very easy to do, and it is actually quite, I mean, for me, because that was always the first thing that I learned, but I realized that many people don't do this. I've seen so many CVs that don't do this. When you mention your work experience as well as your education, start with the most recent experience. Do not start with your secondary school or whatever. Nobody cares about that if you've also been to college or to university, or nobody cares about your because the thing is, realistically, the companies or recruiters or whatever get 20, 50, 100, sometimes hundreds of CVs. So yeah, it might be that they use some kind of scanning system and they scan for specific things. It also might be that they just scan through, and I think there is I don't know the exact number, but it's something like 1.5 seconds or something that they look at your CV. So you need to make sure that your CV stands out, and so they want to see the most relevant and the most recent thing that you did. So don't start with like a student job or something so put it in anti-chronological order. Is that the word? I don't know. It is now. So yeah, then also, be a little bit bold. Of course, it depends on the industry, definitely. But that's something that has really helped me many times. I have quite a bold, very colorful CV, and that's also because I do usually work as a content writer or something. So then, of course, that job allows for a creative CV. But yes, your CV, again, needs to stand out from the rest. So what else do I have? Oh, of course, this should kind of be an obvious one, but still, make sure that there are absolutely no mistakes or inconsistencies in your CV. If your hiring manager or recruiter or whatever is anything like me, if there is, I don't know, a full stop after one bullet point and then there is one missing in like in a series of bullet points or something, that's a no for me, because, and I know that sounds very brutal, but this is literally the one thing that you like, the main thing that people will look at, and this needs to reflect who you are. So you can't say that you're very detail oriented or something and then have a typo in your CV or in your cover letter, or capitalize words in one bullet point and then not do it in the next. Like things like this, those are things that for me, I notice those immediately, and it makes you a lot less what's the word?
Attractive.
Yes. Yeah. It immediately just makes me feel like, okay, yeah. So yes, and then also exactly to your point about prove what you say. So don't just say things like, oh, I'm a motivated person, I'm a fast learner, whatever. Literally everyone says that. You need to prove that you actually are, and what you have done and how you have moved the needle in previous experiences. So yeah, I think that's my tips for CVs and cover letters.
I just was thinking of something as well, because I'm very proud of every job that I've done, okay? So I like to list things, but then at some point it just becomes too long, and you don't want to have a CV that is 4 pages long, because that's just too long. So really pick out the roles, the most recent roles, like Gladys said, and also the ones that make the most sense. Maybe you have different industries that you've worked in. Pick out the ones that really work for the role you're going for, and then maybe there's a gap, like a time gap between. They will ask it in the interview if they're interested, and then you can say, yeah, and during the time you worked as this and this. But just make sure you pick the right roles, and maybe not roles that are too far back as well.
Yeah. What I also do, for example, I have a little bio on my CV as well. So at the top, it will say something like, hey, this is, and then in a couple of sentences, I kind of summarize who I am as a person. And if you apply for different industries, because, realistically, I would maybe like to ideally work in a specific industry, but then in the meantime, you also might have to apply for other jobs or whatever. So then those are the kinds of things that I would tailor to that industry, or I would maybe have different versions of a CV. So maybe one for, yes, content writing, maybe one for as an assistant or as a receptionist, or things like that. That is what I've done actually. I did always have different versions depending on, especially for the UK one, because I just wanted to move to the UK so badly. So of course, ideally I did want to work as a content writer, but then I was also like, okay, I will also work as a management assistant, or I can also do some other things. So then I did have different different CVs.
Yeah, that's really good. And then I guess the next point would be the cover letters, which I do have to be honest, I didn't really prepare any notes on that. Mainly because I'm lazy and I don't like to write cover letters.
I know, and there is nothing worse than oh my god, and there's so many memes on this as well. Just, you need to upload your CV, and then there's like 6 pages where you literally need to just enter every single thing manually, like every educational experience, every job experience, and it's just like, honestly, why do you need my CV?
I don't do that. I don't do that anymore. I really don't do that anymore. When I have to upload my CV and they want like all these experiences, the only thing I add is my university, my latest degree, and my latest role, because they can read my CV. Which I don't think is good advice if you really want a job. That's just when I did the panic applying every now and again.
I know, same. And I also just realized something that they do in the UK, and I've never seen this in Belgium, is the questions they ask you about your personal life, to the extent where sometimes I was like, is this illegal? So they ask you about like your if you're single or divorced or whatever, and yeah, maybe yes, maybe in Belgium people, they would do that as well. Then your sexual preference, then your gender identity. That one, okay, I understand, because of course also depending on like that, people need to know how to address you or whatever. So that one I get. But then also religion. What else have I seen?
Oh, they ask you about your race. They ask, are you? And
Yeah.
then there's a massive list. Like they literally have mixes in there. They're like, well, I always choose black and white mix. But it's like, it's weird. Why do you need to, like, why? I mean, most companies say they do this to, first of all, improve the diversity, but then also to get what, if they hire you, you will go into that data as like that category of person. So they can have data on how diverse the company is, but also it's weird. Let me be.
I know. I'm usually other white, because it's usually white British and then other white or white European or something. But yeah, I know. And I even saw a couple where you need to choose like your title. So for me, it would be Miss, but then it also had like Lord and things like that as options. I don't know. The UK, like they're intense about this.
Oh yeah. They take their titles very seriously.
Well, yes, about the cover letter, I wouldn't. Yeah, again, I had a couple of different versions depending on the industry that I wanted to apply for. But then, of course, some applications will ask you to just write a very specific one where you just something like, give this many reasons on why you like our company or why you would want to work for our company. And honestly, if an application is too much work, it is so off-putting to me. It's so off-putting because it's like if you're applying for a job, for most people is a full-time job. It definitely was for me, and it's so incredibly draining. So then if employers just demand all of these things, or also I've had it where I applied for jobs and then usually there would be like an internal an initial phone call, with a recruiter usually. But I've also had it where I would just not get a phone call or anything and just immediately get an email that was like, okay, here's your assessment, do this. And this would be for the first round. I get it if you're in the last 3, like you're in the last round and it's you and 1 or 2 other people, then okay, if they want you to do an assessment, I can kind of get that. I had to do that for my current job as well, but just to even get longlisted, no.
Yeah, I mean, I would do it for a job I really, really, really want, but I have different phases of applying. I have the serious applying when I'm actually like, okay, I need a new job and I want a good job, but I'm in a position where I can choose where I want to work. Or I have the, oh my God, I might lose my job. I need to panic apply on everything that I can find, where I literally don't even read the whole job description. Just press the easy apply button on LinkedIn, which also you are very much more likely to hear back if you actually go through a proper application process and not just the easy apply button on LinkedIn, from my personal experience.
Oh, I think I must have, and I'm not even exaggerating, I must have applied for thousands of jobs via easy click or something, or like the one click thing on Reed or Indeed. I heard back maybe once or twice. It's really not worth it. I don't even know why they have this as an option, because no, it's not worth it. But I'm exactly the same. And when I decided to move to the UK, I applied for jobs that I didn't really want, but then I just really wanted to move to the UK. Or then I would hear back and then I would actually look at the job description and realize, oh, I actually don't really want this job. And yeah, same thing when I think the panic applying, we felt like this every couple of weeks when we were working for the shit show.
Yeah.
So then same thing, because then maybe a couple of weeks later they would call me and I'd be like, oh yeah, no, I don't really want this.
I know. I couldn't even remember anymore who they were because I applied for so many roles.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. Well, I guess I have for the cover letter, like you said, I have several ones if I'm actually actively, seriously applying. And then what I usually do is I like to give a reason for why I want to work at the company, just short and sweet. Maybe they have a mission that they're really proud of, and then I just quickly say something about the mission. And then I like to read through what they want, like when they list the experiences they're looking for or the responsibilities you will have in the role. I'll pick a few. Well, I pick a few if they're like a lot listed. I picked a few that I think are the main things the role focuses on, and then write I write examples of how I've already done that in my previous roles. Yeah, and that's the main thing that I do in a cover letter. I'll just pick responsibilities they want, experiences they want, and then I name things I've done previously and how I did it. A bit like we said in the cover letter, also a bit like we said it about the CV. Like, don't just list the tasks, add what exactly you did, maybe be more detailed than in the CV, and say the impact it had.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Just to, as much as possible, try to tailor your cover letter as well. And then also, if you do have a template where you just write a couple of things, and then what I would do, for example, I would have a couple of fields where I would enter like the job, then I would fill out the job title and the company. And there have been instances where I missed one and I actually sent a cover letter that still had a previous company in it. So that's something you really want to avoid.
Oh yeah,
I've been there.
I've been there too. Yeah, and yeah.
Okay.
I think my last thing to the cover letter is, I mean, you just mentioned it, but if anything, I feel like the cover letter probably needs to be more tailored to the role than the CV even, because that's really, if they want a cover letter, they obviously expect you to sell yourself to them in a way. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Okay. Then maybe let's go to the next stage. So you have your CV and cover letter ready, and then it's time to start applying. And like I already said, applying for many people, unless you're someone who is just exceptionally lucky, but for many people, applying is a full-time job. But also, what I would also say is, and I think this is maybe, well, I've read many articles and also just anecdotal stories of the difference here between men and women. Sometimes apply even if you think that you don't match every single requirement on the job description, because I think that's a thing that many of us do, I think, is look at it and be like, oh, but I don't have 8 years of experience here, I only have 4 years of experience. No, just apply. Honestly, apply. Of course not if it says, okay, the main thing is if Portuguese is your first language and you don't speak a single word of Portuguese, then maybe don't. But if you're like, oh, I don't know if I 100% have all of this, I think recruiters and companies know that they will always, that there's probably not going to be a candidate that has every single, or that matches every single point. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Yeah, especially the thing that you just said with, we want someone with 5 years experience in this and this. I was very much the person that was like, but I don't have any experience in this, or like, I've only have a year of experience in working in this. And my boyfriend was literally like, so what? Doesn't matter. You still have the skills. Just apply. And I mean, he's right. Just go for it.
That is such a thing, though. Like, my grandfather was the same. My grandfather, literally, after I'd worked at the shit show for like a year or something, my grandfather was like, yeah, but then you count, all of these jobs that you did, and then you count all of your you basically have 10 years of work experience. And I was like, I don't know. I think that might be a bit too extreme.
Yeah.
That might be a bit of a stretch. But that's literally, again, I think that's just how white men also how they think.
Yeah, but also,
of course, not all of them, but like I think in general that is a difference. I'm sorry, I think it is also just based on the people I know and everything. Because then when you do end up getting an interview, just also when it comes to asking about salaries and everything, there is just a difference there, and there's research and statistics that also back that up. So
yeah. What I wanted to say also is when jobs ask specifically for like certain years of experience, sometimes they're just bullshitting. I'm not, because I was for a while looking for like more social media content creator roles while I was in my previous role, or like for my previous role. And there were job descriptions that literally said, we want someone with 6 years of TikTok experience. And it's not been around that long. So maybe think before you write a job description as well. Anyway.
I know. Oh my God. That reminds me as well. Also because I say the thing about, making sure that there's no mistakes in your application and everything, but the amount of mistakes and typos and grammatical errors that I have seen in job descriptions, and that's even more funny because then they are the ones who are like, we need someone who's detail oriented. You need to be very very detail oriented. You need to be very serious about grammar and spelling and everything. And then they have like 5 different mistakes in their job description.
Yeah, I think that's actually a red flag for me. I don't like applying for jobs that look a bit shady, which means when they have a lot of errors written in their description, or when it just doesn't make sense, like with the 6 years of TikTok experience, I don't even want to go for it because I'm like, no, there's a red flag blowing in the wind.
I know, but there's so many of those, so many of the like, oh, this is an entry level position, but we want you to be trilingual and have 8 years of work experience, but also you can't be older than 25 or something.
Oh yeah, and you're only gonna earn 20K.
Yes. Oh, it's the absolute audacity. And also they know that there will always be one person who will take that job because they just need a job.
Yeah. Well, should we move on to the interview advice?
Yes. I also just wanted to say on that really quickly that because I know it's difficult, because if you do need a job, of course, sometimes you just need a job, and you just need a job even if it's not really what you want to do, or it's not really the salary that you want, but sometimes you just need to kind of fill that gap while you look for something better maybe. But also when I decided I wanted to move to the UK, I was doing temp jobs in Belgium, and it took me a couple of months, and after a while my family kind of started being like, maybe you should actually find like a permanent job in Belgium, because it's maybe not happening yet. And I didn't really want to because I didn't want to feel trapped there or something. And actually that's an interesting story as well. So my last temp job that I did was as a receptionist in Antwerp, and then I was doing covering for someone who was like had an operation or something, and I had weekly contracts, and they honestly expected me to just stay there for as long as they needed me. So they would say things like, when did I move again? Yeah, I moved in like September or something, and they would say things like oh yeah, we know that that you want to move to London, but like even if you find a job there, this would be like after, I don't know what her name was, Danielle comes back, right? And I was honestly like, also I had just had an experience where I also had weekly contract, and they had told me, oh, you can stay until after New Year, so for another 3 more months or something. And then one day on a Friday I went into work and they were like, oh, by the way, this is your last day, because yeah, that's just how it is. We changed our minds. So that was the experience I had before that one. So then I went to that job, and they were like, oh yeah, of course, like if you're moving to London and everything, like of course you're staying for as long as we need you. And I was like, do you honestly think that if if I get a job in London tomorrow, I wouldn't just quit the next day? Because like that, and that's the thing, when they work with temp contracts and with weekly contracts, of course companies do that because then that is good for them, because they can literally just fire you or end the contract whenever they want. But then you have every right to do the same thing as well. So then I don't know, I'm telling this story. But then I actually ended up doing that. So I got the shit show job. I almost said the name. And then I actually did message them and I was like, hey, I won't be coming next week because, I found something else. And that woman was furious. Like, I got a series of messages that was like, well, actually, I should say, I sent that message. I asked my best friend to send that message because I was scared to send it. So she sent that message. And I got a series of messages from that woman where she was like, I don't know what I ever did to you. And I don't understand how you can do this to me. And I don't this and this and this. And I was like, sis, what do you expect? Like, you hire someone on weekly contracts. It's a two-way street, you can end the contract, they can end the contract.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, but so then I was applying for all these jobs in the UK. And then eventually I was working with some kind of like recruitment agency or something where they would actually find the jobs. But I don't really have the best experiences with them because I would give my criteria and everything, and then they would constantly call me about jobs that were like less than half of my minimum salary that I had told them. And then the guy would be like, oh, but then you're already in the UK and then you can look for something else. And I was like, mate, I'm not moving to one of the most expensive cities in the world by myself for a salary that's less than what I could make here or what my temp job is currently making. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those recruitment companies. Even though right before I got the job at Shit Show, I got a job offer where they offered me like 35k. I don't know what the role was. They just gave me the salary. So that actually sounded quite good, but the other one was better. Okay, I'm going to go into the interview advice now. If that's okay. Okay, so the first thing I have on my list is number one is once you made it to the interview, you can be already really happy because now you might be one of, 10 people. Whereas when you sent out your CV and your cover letter, you probably were one of a few hundred, depending where you're applying for. So you already did the hardest step. You got their attention and you're at the interview stage. So now don't just take it as I'll see where this goes. No, if you actually want the job and want that specific job, then work on the interview. This is your time to shine. This is where you can really, really sell yourself. So my number one tip would be do your research. And what I mean with that is like research what questions the interviewer could ask depending on what role you're going for. For example, you can create a Glassdoor account. Many companies have reviews on how the interview process was, and people who went through that interview process might have written down the questions they have been asked for that specific role. If they don't have anything on Glassdoor and it's like a general role, let's say it's a client success manager, go on YouTube and find what people usually ask client success managers. Or don't even go on YouTube, just Google it. There's always something. Find a client success manager newsletter. Like, depending on what role you go for, there's always information out there. There's a lot of information out there. So then once you have selected the questions that come up on several websites and videos and whatever, or on Glassdoor, pick them and answer them and prepare for them. And I actually also wanted to mention as a little tip, especially when you want to work for a tech company, there's this app called Blind. So people who work for a specific company or worked for the company, they can share on that app how the interview process was, but also just general reviews about the company they work for. So you can actually do your own little research in, do I really want to be part of their culture and of their company?
Oh my God, I was at yours when your boyfriend, I think,
Yes, he
told
suggested
us
that
about
to
this.
you.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and then he did it for he looked at the shit show reviews.
Oh God, yeah, they were so bad.
Like, yeah, we should have checked this before.
But I think he did it when we were already working there, right? Yeah. When we already knew, when we already knew it was a shit show. Yeah. And then I have another tip, which is the one that I never thought about until I met my boyfriend. So this is all him. He gave me this information. Well, he didn't create the method that I'm going to talk about, but he taught me about it. And I do really think it works, because whenever I had an interview where I used this, I got the job. Anyway, so when preparing for how you're going to answer interview questions, it's important to follow the STAR method. So STAR means situation, task, action, and results. And if you then want to go above and beyond and stand out, you can also add what you learned from the situation at the end. And this method is really good for the questions when that are like, tell us about a time where you had to blah, blah, blah. So I've written down a really basic, simple example to just explain how that STAR method can work. So, for example, the question is, tell us about a time where you had to handle an upset customer. So when answering this question, again, look at the skills that are required in the job descriptions to write that answer. Pull some of the things that they expect from the person applying for the job into that answer. But if you would want to answer this question, you would start like this. So a time where I have handled an upset customer was, so now you go into the situation. The customer was upset because they bought something in my shop that wasn't working when they got home. The task you then did was you had to deal with the customer. You had to calm them down, but also come up with a solution, and preferably come up with a solution that makes a customer not reject you as a shop and probably come back, even though they had a bad experience. So the action would have been you exchange the product with a non-faulty one, and then you might give them a 20% discount for the next shop if they come back to your shop. And then the result is the customer is happy with the new product, will most likely come back because of the 20% on the next item. And then if you learn something, you can say you learned that you need to make sure to test the product, or check the product before sending the customer home with it. Now this is just a really simple, basic example, but I think it explains the STAR method quite nicely.
Yes, I love that. I love that example.
Thank you.
Because sometimes also you will get the specific question, tell us about a project that you handled the wrong way or something that went wrong. And then, of course, you have to make sure that you also definitely explain what you learned from this or what you would do differently. So then, again, the STAR method is very good.
Yeah. And then I have one more, which would just be come prepared to ask the interviewer questions at the end, because they will always ask you, are there any questions that you have now for us? And I think this is also a time where you can show the knowledge you have about the role. So don't just ask, how much is the money? And I don't know, how often do I have to come into the office in a week if it's like a remote job? Of course, this is important, but I would keep that for the next stage. What I mean with ask them questions is like ask them questions that are almost role specific, that show that you have some kind of industry knowledge or knowledge about the role you're applying for.
About the questions, I would say also, I want to say this is essential. It is so important to ask questions. Don't ever in an interview be like, oh no, you've explained everything really well, I don't have questions. That that's not good. Don't do that. I'm not saying that it's an immediate no if you do that, but it's just not good because it just shows that you always have questions. It's impossible to not have anything that you want to know. So yes, the things that I always ask are, for example, what are the challenges for someone in this role? Or how do you see this role? Do you see this role changing in the next 6 months or something? That's, well, I should have asked this when I started it, but they probably would have lied at our shit show company. Then also a good one is, why is this role available? I think that says a lot as well. Then you can ask the kind of basic, like, what do you like best about working here? But I also, something that I asked in my current, something that I asked in my most recent interview, which was the one the job I'm currently doing, I asked them because, again, I had just left the shit show experience. And so I knew that one of the most important things for me was I need to know if this company respects people. So I asked, and I think I might have mentioned this in a previous episode, but I asked them, I want all of you, it was 3 women on that call. And I said, I want each of you to give me an example of when you had to stand your ground and maybe disagreed with someone higher up or something. And you felt heard and respected by the company, and maybe they didn't agree and maybe you didn't get your way, but you at least felt like you had a say and that they respected what you had to say. And then also my favorite bonus question, and this is, you need some balls for this because this is something that maybe many people, including me on some occasions, are like too nervous or too like, I don't know, to ask this. But I do think that it really makes you seem very confident and very like, oh, okay, this person is like, they're not afraid to, ask this. And this is there anything that makes you doubt if I'm a good fit? And I've asked this a couple of times and it has always gone down quite well, because that gives you an opportunity to kind of hear what they think of you or how they feel. And if they say something like, oh, well, maybe just this, or another way you can ask this is maybe, is there anything else that I can elaborate on a little bit more or something? Because then if at some point in the interview, and that is bound to happen in every interview, or like afterwards, you will feel like, oh, I should have said this, or I should have explained this a little bit more. So then the hiring manager or the person who's doing the interview can, maybe if they say, oh, well, this question or something, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about this? Or, oh, we don't know if this experience, or if, for whatever reason, you're maybe not the most suitable, then at least it gives you a chance to go back to that point and explain this a little bit more. Do I have anything else? I do have some other tips for interviews.
Yeah, I have one more left that I just seen in my notes. Yeah. It's just one question that they will just probably always ask you, and that I really like to prepare for the most, because that's always different for every interview, is the question, why do you want to work at this company? I think it's I think it's a question people sometimes don't think about enough. It's just like, oh, I like the culture and I like the mission that you have, but I actually like to really prepare an answer for this question. I like to research the company. Maybe the company has like a blog that they post on regularly, or I like to look at LinkedIn and see what they've recently posted, if there are any great achievements that they've had. And then I like to put that somehow into the answer of why I want to work there, for example. And then I also research their values, and I like to combine all of that together. So if it's a company that values diversity, I want to point out that I want to work for that company because it offers people with all different backgrounds a way into, I don't know, the tech industry, and that I've seen on their LinkedIn that they've recently just won that diversity award, and that really motivates me to be part of their culture, for example. And then, yeah, so basically my answer is split into 3 points. I want to do something that shows that I've know things about what's going on in their company. But then I also want to say something why I think I am a great fit for that company. For example, that I already have experience in that industry, that I've had like 5 year experience in that specific industry. And yeah, don't know. Does that make sense? I think so. I just think it's a question that people usually expect, but they don't go in deep enough. Like, you can really win some points here by showing that you actually know what's going on within that company that you're applying for.
Yeah, that was one of mine as well, especially things like around the values or something. If you can say something like, oh, I saw this article that says that you guys want to, I don't know, exclusively work with recyclable materials by 2030, and that's really important to me, or something, that is really good. That just shows that you have done your research, that you know what they stand for and everything. I think even like the company that we work for they have like 8 values or something, I think. And I had actually looked all of them up, and I think that in my interview they asked me what my favorite one was. So yes, look at the values, look if you can find some things in the press about them, or yes, exactly, social initiatives or something that they do. I think that's always a really good one. But also, when you do your business, your research on the business or on whatever, the employer, sometimes I have also had the question quite often, and maybe it's because I'm in content and yeah, maybe that's why, but they have also asked me, what do you think of like our website and the content on it, and is it clear and does it look good? And also, don't be afraid to say no. And if something is not clear, because I've had it as well, where I did research, or I was doing research, and sometimes I just spent half an hour on that website and I still didn't really know what they did, or I still didn't really have a very good idea of what they do. So then I also would I wouldn't say, well, I actually have no idea what you guys do, but I would just try and mention or ask questions about that as well. Just say something like, oh, so I was wondering how this and this works, because that was something that, to me, yeah, I don't know, I would say that. And then if they ask how you think that their website looks or whatever, then you can definitely say, maybe even give some ideas on how they could improve, or how it would be more clear for you as a visitor of that website. And then also a question that I have had a lot, and then in the beginning I was never really prepared for this, is like, and again, this depends very much on the industry, but I think especially if it's a creative role or something, or actually no, I think this can be the case in any basically any industry. They sometimes can ask you about like examples of brands or companies that you think are really good, and I played myself with this a couple of times, because then it's this thing of like, when they ask, oh, who do you think does great marketing, and then you just cannot think of a single example. So I would say, depending on the industry or the role that you're going for, make sure that you always have a couple of those examples ready as well. Oh, also, this is usually one of the first, if not the first question. If they ask you, okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself, don't just repeat your CV and don't go into an entire life story. They want to hear, why are you the best fit? So basically, your mission here is to, in the most concise way, and also use storytelling to sell yourself. So make that connection to the job, make links to the job. If it's, for me, for example, if it's something related to writing, then I will always kind of try and, if I talk about my education or my professional experience, I will make sure that is always something that kind of comes back in every single one of my experiences. Yeah. And then well, I had a nice example here of about people of doing some research. One of my friends, when she applied for a job, I don't know how she found this information. I think she looked at the hiring manager's Instagram or something, and she saw that this person was a very big fan of like of a specific author, and she hates that author. She absolutely despises that author. But during the interview, she was like, they asked her something like, "Oh, what do you do in your spare time?" And she was like, "Oh, so I love to read, and my favorite author by far is this person." And the hiring manager was like, "No, no way, no." And then they just talked about the author for a bit. Yeah, I
I love that.
it can't hurt. It can't hurt to do things like that.
Oh, yeah, just don't make it too obvious.
No, and make sure that you actually do know something about them.
Yeah, don't just mention the author, know the books. And also, this might seem very obvious, but make sure that if the interview is at home, like remotely, which most interviews now are, make sure you have good audio and good internet connection. And also, because actually, when I am interviewed as a content editor, I was wearing a headset, everything was fine, but as we've had several times now in this podcast, sometimes there's an ambulance or a police car going by. So I kept apologizing for it. And they actually then told me they liked to hire me as well. One of the reasons they wanted to hire me was because I was very detail oriented when it came to the sound, because they didn't even notice these things until I mentioned it. So the sound was always good. Which, if you're a content editor and you work with sound and everything, it's quite important. So, yeah.
Yes.
Says the one with the podcast who every now and again has some audio issues.
That's mostly me, though. I feel it's mostly me who has the issues.
Oh.
I'm trying. You should see me right now. I have pillows on my desk.
Oh, yeah.
So that actually helps.
We started posting, well, you started posting our videos on Instagram, and I just like, people must think I'm a maniac. Like, if people would actually see the whole room I'm sitting in, like, this is soundproofing for the real beginners. I have pillows, blankets. I mean, this is actually a wardrobe behind me, but I mean, you people can't see this, but it's a wardrobe behind me, and I've hung our guest blanket there so the echo doesn't come back, and it's like a whole thing. But it works, so...
Yeah, and you sound so good as well. I'm still a bit jealous. I also wonder if because I'm still frozen on the screen,
Yeah.
I wonder if the video is going to be like that, just me being frozen.
Probably.
I also have I just thought of this. I also have a little bit of a red flag to look out for. Maybe I should have made a list of red flags as well, but one that comes to mind right now is if wait. Okay, I had to cough. If you applied for a role and the initial like the first stage is not a one-to-one conversation and is like a group thing where they invite you to like a webinar, or where they're like, "Oh, come to this thing and then we can explain everything." That is kind of that most of the time, maybe not always, in 99% of the time, that is giving MLMs. So yeah, I would say
Run away from that pyramid scheme.
That is definitely a red flag. And I just had this experience with someone I know who actually did get invited to something like that, and it was virtual, I think, but very very obviously, very clearly, very like immediately it was this thing of like, "Oh, we're a family here," and you know, it's just that is another thing as well, the whole like, we're like a family. No, you're not. And if they say they are, then I don't know, I find that quite sus as well.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds more like a cult to me.
Also, a big thing, I think, that has to do with interviews and everything is the salary. And I think for many people, that is kind of a tricky thing, because at the end of the day, that is the reason why most of us are working, why most of us are looking for a job. Yet, for some reason, when we apply for jobs, we all need to pretend that that is not the main reason why we're there. And we cannot, of course, directly say that that is the main thing that we think about when we apply for jobs or when we decide to take a job or not. So, and honestly, the amount of student jobs that I have done where I didn't even know the salary until the moment I signed the contract on my first day is actually just, I don't know. I don't even understand why this, I mean, I understand why this is a thing, but that shouldn't even be allowed.
No, it shouldn't.
to do that.
I think, though, especially when you like apply for more like after uni kind of jobs, or like corporate jobs especially, then you usually will be in contact with one of the recruiters at some point. It might be the screening call, and then the call where the recruiter calls you and tells you you got the job. And if you just have general questions, even before the interview, even if you have questions about the role, like, contact your recruiter. They are there to help you. They want you to be successful, because it is their job to bring successful candidates in. So you can, first of all, speak to them, I think, directly about the salary as early as possible, as early as you would like to, because the interview is mainly there to see if it's a fit, but then the recruiter is there for all the other information and even more. You can also, before you even have your interview, ask the recruiter questions that you do have about the role. Like, it can help you gain more knowledge about the role. Let's say it's a client-facing role. You can ask about what kind of customers, what kind of clients the company works with, and what's the biggest challenge. They can give you a certain amount of information about roles as well.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I would also say, yes, conversations around salary, I would try and keep that ask the recruiter that, and not during the interview with the hiring manager or something. But also, and it is always a tricky thing, and I don't really know the answer to the exact or perfect answer to this, to like when you should ask this or something. But honestly, the amount of time I have wasted doing like initial screening calls of like 40 minutes with a recruiter, to then at the end of the call find out that they paid half of my expectations or something. So I think you can definitely ask this. I think ideally the recruiter will ask you this during a first, or will tell you the salary, or so it will, hopefully it just comes up during the first call. And if not, then I feel like you can definitely ask. But also what I would say, and I've read this many times as well, is like, try to avoid giving an exact number when they ask you about your salary. When they ask you what was your most recent, go on.
Sorry, about this, I actually recently just learned that, well, not because I'm going through an interview, but friends of mine are going through an interview, and I talked to my boyfriend about how they can get their salary out there, basically. Recruiters often ask, like, what's the salary you're looking for? You don't actually even have to answer. You can also just be like, what's the salary range you have ready for this role? Because that way they might tell you, well, it's between 40 and 50K if you're lucky. You can very lucky. So well. And then you can be like, good, because I'm looking for, I don't know, 50. That's what I'm looking for. Like, it's better to ask them. And if they really don't want to tell you, yes, I would definitely do what you just said. Like, don't give them, I'm looking for 45K. You can give them a range as well. But always up the range a little bit. Like, always say a bit more than you actually want, because then if you end up negotiating, you can then, go for what you actually want.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like if they want a specific number and you give them a specific number, I just don't really think, I think most of the time that just won't be good for you, because if it's too low, then they know, oh, this person, they will do it for 25. So why should we pay them 30? Or, so, and I also, when they ask me, I've always just, like you said, tried to bounce back. Well, no, that's not the right expression. I've always tried to just, to turn the question and say, well, usually what I say is, well, actually, I've realized that I'm looking for the whole package, and there's a couple of things that I find very important now. For example, things like, sustainability initiatives or social initiatives or other benefits. So I'm interested to hear what you guys want to offer the person in this role. And then they will probably have to give you something. And if they keep insisting on an answer, then do give them a range.
Yeah, but also, why are you so stubborn? Like, just give me an answer. Oh, that's what I would be thinking if the recruiter
No,
would
I know,
just not
I
give me
know.
a
And
range. Like, it's kind of a red flag in a way.
I know, but it's like, because it's like they're wasting their time. Maybe I'm wasting my time. Like I have done so,
Yeah.
like I said, I've done so many interviews where I just, yeah. And also,
Yeah, I mean, literally, the way to bring that topic up can be, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I know the time's precious. So can we just quickly talk about what is the budget you have available for this role? What have you planned to pay the person in this position? That just gets it out of the way.
Yeah. I think that's very good, because actually with the shit show job, so I know that we had very different experiences because you applied and basically got hired right away. I didn't hear for like months and months and months. So I did my interview. Well, they gave me the wrong time, first of all. So one of the people who were doing the interview messaged me and was like, "Where are you?" And I was like, no, my interview is in 2 hours. So that was the first thing, because then the recruiter was in the States, and it was very shady already, because it was so weird. It was like every time she messaged me or every time she emails me, her email address would be just a series of like letters and numbers, and then she could call me, but if I tried to call her, then it didn't work. I don't know, it was so weird. And so then after the interview, like I did the interview and everything, so the last round, and then I didn't hear for I think honestly like 2 months or something. I didn't hear anything. And then actually I almost got and this is actually a good example of literally anything can happen, and it is not you, and it doesn't have anything to do with you. I did an interview for well, it's a property platform in the UK. It is one of the two biggest ones, I would say. And so I went there in person, actually traveled to London to do that interview and everything. It is still to this day, the most ridiculous office I've ever seen in my entire life. They had like a nail studio and a fitness, and they had a brow bar, and they had all kinds of things. And every meeting room was in a different like theme. There was one that was like kind of like a swimming pool, and there was one that was a tree house, and it was an actual tree house with like a ladder and everything. Anyway, I had a really nice interview and it went really well, and I left, and they called the recruiter and said, okay, this is great. And the recruiter told me, okay, I'm 100% expecting an offer today. And then they changed their minds and decided that literally one of them all of a sudden went, hey, actually, I've been thinking maybe instead of this role, we should actually create a slightly different role and just change the team a little bit and hire a different person. Even the recruiter was just completely, well, he was quite frustrated, actually. Well, of course, because it was his commission. But yes, it was just a very strange experience and everything. And I think the next day I heard from the shit show. Literally on my way back from London to Belgium, they called me. And then they set the salary. So this was after a month, and I had already done all of the rounds and everything. And then they told me the salary. And still to this day, if I would have accepted, well, if I would have gotten that other offer, I would have said yes. And they paid about, I think, half of what the shit show ended up paying. I still don't know how I ever thought that I would survive by myself, but yeah, so it actually all worked out. Well, it didn't, because the shit show ended up being a scam. But yeah, just I think all of that just to say that it is so incredibly random, and at the end of the day, it is just still a lottery and anything can happen. I've made it to the very last round and everyone was so incredibly excited, and then there would just be something, or just one of them who would just something would happen. So
Yeah, getting a job is definitely, it's most of the time it's not you. It's just, yeah, it's a lottery. They sometimes also a role is already filled, even though you're still going through the process. Like sometimes people just know exactly who they will hire for a role, but they have to go through the whole interview process just because that's what they have to do legally, and they kind of just wasting your time. But you don't know, you just won't get the role, and you'll never find out.
do you have a worst interview experience?
No. I actually don't.
Okay.
I guess the worst one was just when they asked me about the thing in Vienna for the radio station, when they asked me about if I can explain to them something about the motorways, and I just made something up, and it was quite embarrassing because I don't drive. But otherwise, I usually just, even student jobs, any jobs, I think in all the job interviews I've had, there were only like 3 jobs I didn't get.
Oh my god, how do you do this?
I don't know. I think in Austria it was mainly because I was the diversity quota. As harsh as it sounds, like there are not many black people, not as many black people there. So whenever they got a chance to hire me, I think they just did. In the UK, I don't know. It must just be impressive.
Yeah.
Oh God, what about you?
I have a very clear worst experience. This was when I was in Berlin and I was looking for an internship, and I wish I could remember what the job title was or what the job description said, but I wanted to work as a content writer, because I ended up, actually the internship I ended up getting was content writer in the marketing department. So that's the kind of job that I was looking for. So I don't really know, I can't really remember what it probably was quite it probably was quite analytics focused or something, but it still must have been a content role, because otherwise I wouldn't have applied for it, I think. Anyway, I get there to the place. I still remember where it was, around the corner from Checkpoint Charlie. I get there. There's this guy, one guy, he takes me to a room that's completely empty. There's one table with like a desk, more like just a desk with like one chair. And he's like, okay, sit down. I sit down, and he gives me what I can only describe as an exam. It was literally like 8 pages stapled together, and it was nothing but fractions. He literally gave me a maths exam.
Honestly, that must be the worst recruitment hiring person ever who made you come there, because they obviously did not read your CV properly.
No, and I mean, what I have learned from that experience, in that moment, I was so embarrassed. And he was also like, yeah, okay, I'll be back in an hour. You have an hour to do this or something. And this was obviously not, I think, what most people think about when they think about a job interview. So I literally did what I sometimes did during actual math or chemistry or physics exams, which was I made sure that the first page had been like written on. And I waited for a good, I don't know, 30 minutes or something. I did scan the exam, but I immediately knew there is no way. I don't even know where to begin. So I waited, I think, a good 30 minutes, and then I just got up and left. And I think, I don't know if I saw him on the way out. I think maybe yes. And maybe I was just like, okay, bye. And I was just so embarrassed. I don't even think I told many people about this because I was embarrassed. Whereas now, well, this was 10 years ago. Today it would be very different. I think I would see this and I would immediately tell him, okay, I'm sorry. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Let's not waste anyone's time. This is clearly not the role I thought I was applying for. And I probably would also give that feedback to whether it was a recruitment agency or that organization directly. I would probably, because I applied for this and I went to the interview, so it probably wasn't exactly like if that would have been what the job description said, then I never would have gone. So I think it probably was also maybe I just interpreted things a little bit wrong, but then also I think they also, I think, clearly should have stated that that's what the first round was. So yes, that was definitely my worst my worst experience. And now I would be a lot more direct about these things, but yeah, back then I wasn't. Okay, so then to end things, I kind of want to give some final advice as well. And I know we've been giving advice for the entire duration of the episode, but yeah, just some things to keep in mind, I think. First of all, I just want to say again that looking for a job, applying for jobs is the most frustrating process ever. And you just need to remember that you can do everything right and it's still a lottery. And I know that maybe that makes it probably sound worse because it's not even within your control. But like Isabella said earlier as well, it might be that they have a scanner and they just look for specific keywords. It might be that they've already given the role to someone internally. It might be that they only look at the first 50 CVs. Like, it is not you. That's the main thing, I think. It is not you. And I've felt quite defeated in the past when I applied for a role that maybe was just what, I've applied, for example, for like LGBTQ organizations or body positive organizations, and where I felt like, okay, it's very clear in my application how passionate I am about this, and then I just got an immediate no, and that can be very demotivating. But yeah, it is not you, and you just need to keep going. Also, when you do get the interview and everything, remember that they also need to be a match with you. So you also need to look at them as like, and I mean, I know that in reality, they probably have more options than you do. That's just how it is. But I do think that you need to keep that in mind as well. Is this a company that you want to work for? And they also need to, yes, you need to convince them that you're the right candidate, but they also need to convince you that they're a company that you want to work for. Then my last piece of advice is have the confidence of an average white man. Don't sell yourself short. If you look at a job description and you think, oh, I don't know if I can do this or that, I like to ask myself, okay, I usually think about my grandfather. I'm like, would my grandfather feel this way? 9 out of 10, the answer is no. 9 out of 10, that man would just go for it and be like, of course I can do this. How hard can it be? And also, can you maybe, because I think this maybe is a good this is kind of related to that ski shop anecdote that you told me recently.
Yes, I don't know where I got the anecdote from. I honestly don't remember. But that happens a lot with me. I have information. I know the information is correct. I just don't know where it comes from. I was really hard at uni when I had to write papers. Anyway, the anecdote was something like, there was someone working in a ski shop and you have to make a tick in how experienced you are when you are in skiing when you hire skis. Because it depends on, I think, the length or whatever. And I don't know. I'm from Austria, but I'm not a ski expert. Anyway, what the person told me is when they were working there, they were actually told that when men fill out that form, always put them down a little bit within their experience, whereas when women fill out that form, always put them up a little bit with their experience, because that it tends to be the way the gender think about themselves, I guess.
And on that note, yeah, so I think that's a great way to end this. Have the confidence of an average white man.
So before we wrap up, we wanted to say, as always, thank you to all of you who made it to the end of the episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope this was a little bit useful to you. And yeah, maybe you heard some of our experiences that you can relate to. And yeah, remember, the journey does not end here. We will be back next week with a brand new episode and a brand new theme, we will. Can I say the theme? Because I think it's quite exciting. I think a lot of people will like it, especially.
I know, I'm so excited.
Yeah. So our corporate theme was maybe a bit more dry for some of you, but don't you worry, because next week we will be talking about all things dating. Well, not just next week, for the next 3 weeks. It will be all about dating experiences. So yeah, stay tuned.
Yes. I'm so excited, honestly. I have my notes ready and everything. I cannot wait. Yeah. But we also want to hear from you because, of course, you guys all have your own experiences and everything. So do share your job experiences, experiences applying for jobs, interviewing for jobs, all of that good stuff. We want to hear it because I actually genuinely really love these stories. I think it's so interesting. Yeah, so connect with us, follow us on We Are Millennial Musings on Instagram, and share your own musings, funny moments, and the not so glorious times of being a millennial.
Absolutely. So yeah, until next week, stay curious and keep the stories coming. Bye.
Bye.